Good afternoon and good evening all. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our 14th Technical Working Group meeting, and I really appreciate you for making the time and joining us today. So, as you know, today it's our last workshop day. So the workshop sessions, as we all know, that the workshop session started about 2 months ago, and then our first workshop was about discussing about the catalyzing the policy impetus for disaster-related statistics in order to understand the core elements of a policy on disaster-related statistics, the basic steps for the implementation, and perceived challenges in the development process. And then in our last meeting, or for the second workshop, it was about on determining the scope of the data in the disaster-related statistical framework, basic range of disaster-related statistics. And the data items and indicators were identified during the discussion, as well as data sources identified for the basic range of disaster-related statistics, the covering the four main areas, namely disaster risk, disaster occurrence, disaster impacts, and disaster risk reduction expenditure, accounting based on what are available at the country level. And of course, we also discussed about the administrative and democratic statistics are also required in compiling the basic range of the statistics. And a lot of challenges still exist in accounting and reporting of disaster-related statistics. So also in disaster occurrences, for example, the definition and type of disasters and the unique identification number of disasters still need to be standardized both at the local and the national level, and also for international comparability. So for today's workshop, we will focus on coordination of the disaster-related statistical framework business process. More specifically, the workshop aims to review the division of work responsibilities among stakeholders and analyze the institutional arrangements necessary to establish this disaster-related statistical framework and propose disaster-related statistical framework coordination structure and mechanisms. And as always, we will have trigger presentations followed by our last workshop. So today we have the presentations from UNDRR Asia and the Pacific Regional Office, Indonesia and Vanuatu. And after the trigger presentations, as I said, we will have our last workshop. And of course, as usual, participants, we will be assigned to 3 breakout rooms. And then the organizers will provide their inputs to the policy topic questions assigned to the group. And we have 3 great facilitators. The first group will be with Ranjit Sikara, and the second group will be with Maria, and then the third group will be with Sushil. And after the discussion, 45 minutes discussion, we will be back to the plenary session to report back to the participants. So that's the agenda for today's session. And with your permission, I would like to start the workshop. So now I'm happy to move to our trigger presentation session. And of course, the aim of today's session is to familiarize with the development partners coordination with countries on disaster-related statistics, the current business process in producing disaster-related statistics, and of course the platforms used in sharing responsibilities among relevant agencies from country-level experiences. So let me invite our first speaker, Ms. Susie Menta, Senior Statistician of the Environment Statistics of Social and Environment Section Division of National Statistic Office, Vanuatu. She will present about the post-disaster needs assessment, specifically a multi-sectorial approach. Ms. Susie, the floor is yours. You have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Maria and Pucci, for allowing us to present this evening from our end in the evening. Good evening or good morning, colleagues, wherever you are. I'll just try to share my screen. From my end. Thank you, Pucci, who shared my screen. Shared the presentation.
Yeah, it is four from ESCAP,
From
Susie.
ESCAP, okay. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Sorry, it's a bit difficult trying to share the screen at my end. So I'll just start off with the presentation as it's here. Thank you. So this is just a general brief background from Vanuatu. So maybe some of us are not aware, Vanuatu is one of the most vulnerable countries in the world because of the many natural disasters that happen uh, uh, from time to time, and mostly to do with volcanic activities, cyclones, droughts, flooding, and to name a few. And those disasters have a very huge impact on the lives and livelihoods of people in Vanuatu, uh, as well as they cause physical damage, um, and that affects the social and economic uh, uh, lives of Vanuatu's local economy. Yeah? So this is from the World Risk report, and this is a little bit of background from Vanuatu for those of you who don't know Vanuatu, and the risks that we go through when it comes to natural disasters. Next, sorry, I'm just gonna. Okay, so this is this year we decided to through the national strategy for the development of statistics uh, under the Paris 21 project, we've decided to implement what we call a Vanuatu disaster related statistics plan. So this is one of the first plans for Vanuatu that we've managed to put out a draft for, and it is as mentioned here, it is nested under the VNS DS from and the time frame of this strategy is from 2021 this year until 2025. But it is still in the drafting process. So once it's finalized, then we will soon begin to implement the plan. So the plan, the legal framework around the plan is from the Disaster Risk Management Act number 23, as mentioned here, and also the Vanuatu Climate Change and Disaster Risk Reduction Policy, and also the Statistics Act, which we've reviewed this year. Unfortunately, it cannot be passed in Parliament this month, but one of the mandates in the Statistics Act is for us to make available any statistical data when it comes to emergencies, especially in natural disasters. So the purpose of the plan is to assist us as the NSO to improve data collection for disaster preparedness. As we know, this is new, and this is one of the areas that we faced when it came to disaster. One of the disasters that happened last year in Sanma, was Santo, one of the northernmost islands in Vanuatu. We realized that coordination and data was not available, readily available for the stakeholders or the lead agencies to use during that time, especially baseline data. So that's why we came up with this plan. So that is why the purpose there is to improve data collection for preparedness, response, and recovery, especially for disaster-related statistics. And the mission of this plan is to coordinate, produce, disseminate quality, timely disaster-related statistical information, especially to manage and report on the risk and the occurrence of the major disasters, the impacts in Vanuatu. And the objectives of the plan are clearly outlined here. For us at the NSO to effectively coordinate this and make sure that the disaster-related statistics are made available, and also how make sure that the people who will use the information will know how to use it to their benefit. And also for us at the NSO to produce a minimum set of disaster-related statistics, which will have to be of national, regional, and international standard, so that it meets those criteria for disaster statistics. And also would have to, that's the third objective. And also we have to ensure that we have the funding in place and the human resource also available, and also work on capacity building for inclusive for the Prime Minister's Office, which is the Department of Strategic Policy Planning and Aid Coordination Unit that looks at the response, and then the VNSO will provide basic statistics, and NDMO to carry out response when it comes to disaster-related statistics. Next. So these are the collaborative roles of the lead agencies. As you see from the diagram on the left, the VNSO, our core function, is for us to identify the statistical needs of the stakeholders, and also list out the statistical needs from our end, and also to provide that baseline data, and also to create a data portal, one that is nested in VNSO, but it's also easily accessible by the lead agencies to use when it comes to disasters. And also another one would be to ensure that the statistics would, of course, adhere to quality standards and classifications when it comes to those indicators, statistical indicators for the disaster. And also to provide disaster loss data. That is one that we would have to tap into when it comes to the disaster plan. And also to coordinate data access and sharing, and carry out also post-disaster surveys, which is one of them is the PDNA, and also to have for information for decision making at the end of the day. And the diagram on your right, it shows the Vanuatu disaster-related statistics plan as the overall plan, and then we have within the VDRSP, the initials there, we have the VNSO, which is lead agency in providing the background statistics that will be used to measure the impacts and the risk assessments. And then those background statistics is mostly on housing, um, population, economy, infrastructure, and any other cross-cutting sectors, such as the environment and to name. And then the other one would be DESPAC, that is the Department of Strategic Policy, Planning and Aid Coordination. Their role here is to coordinate the PDNA and any disaster recovery related matters. And the other one would be the NDMO, and their role in the plan is to manage the preparedness, response, and risk assessment of the disasters through the 8 cluster groups. These 8 cluster groups are groups that look after shelter, maybe housing, shelter, water and sanitation, health and information, communication, and to name a few. And those groups are usually activated once disaster is um, once the disaster happens. The other one would be community groups. They come in as those that represent the community, especially through churches and schools. And as we know, disaster is everyone's business. And when it strikes, it affects the country and everyone down to the community level. Okay. Okay, so the way forward for us at the statistics office is to finalize the disaster related statistics plan this year alongside the National Strategy for Development of Statistics to finalize the plan and to ensure that the plan is implemented. The next one, which is to have a memorandum of agreement between the ministries. Usually the MOA is done by the department, within department, but from an agreement was done this year with the ministerial level that MOA should be done at the ministerial level where the ministers are aware of what agreements the organization or the lead agencies are undergoing. And once we have the memorandum of agreement in place where we have all the responsibilities and dedicated roles listed out specifically from the lead agencies mentioned before, then we can use that with the plan to make a final consultation with all the stakeholders that are within the plan. And once that is done, VNSO here comes in to just coordinate all the action plans or action points that are mentioned in the plan to ensure that everything that is within the plan is carried out. Thank you, Tomas. Thank you, everyone. I think that's the short presentation from my end.
Thank you, Ms. Susie, for the great presentation. And then I'm really pleased to hear that the Vanuatu has its first disaster-related statistics for improving its data collection for the disaster management. And then congratulations on that. And now I would like to give a floor to our members for questions or comments. If you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand or just use the chat box. Thank you. Yes, Miss Iria, floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Susie. Very interesting to see how you're working towards approval of this plan. I just have a quick question to you. You mentioned on the departments involved, Department of Strategic Policy Planning and Net Coordination. Is that within Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or is that within the is that the a department at Planning Ministry? If you don't mind, just to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. The Department of, it's a department, the Department of Strategic Planning, Policy Planning and Aid Coordination. It is under the Prime Minister's office. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yes, Miss Maria. Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, I have two questions for Susie. First one is, what is the target timeline of, what is the indicative timeline where the disaster plan would be finished? And the second question is, are there already existing institutional mechanisms with regards to disaster-related statistics? Or if ever there is none yet, what is your envisioned institutional mechanism? Like, is it going to be an IAC or a TWG after the plan has been put in place?
Okay, thank you, Maria, for the first question on, to answer your first question. Yes, it has been a long process to implement this plan within the NSDS, and we've started in June, but we haven't ended it. We should have finalized this by now. It's finalized. It's just that because it's nested within the NSDS, we still have to finalize fundings for finalize the funds to fund the NSDS as a whole. So once that is finalized, then we'd finalize the plan as well. But for now, I cannot give you a correct um, timeline, but I'm sure it should be out by early next year, because we have started the arranging with the PMO. They were here just this week. We've started talking about the plan to start consultations in advance before this, without using this plan, but we'll just use it as a guide. But until it's finalized, then we'll start using it physically. But um, we've started talks with the DESPAC, the team from the DESPAC office at the PMO. Um, so there's a group of us who've attended a workshop. So they're using that as a team of stakeholders. We have the productive sector in there, and the infrastructure sector, the housing sector, and other agencies that are also part of the PDNA. So we're using that as a leading group that will ensure that the plan, uh, when we start consultations next week, we'll start off with those group of agencies that were involved in the PDNA to see where the data needs are. Maria, is that okay?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Susie.
So I can see a couple of people raise their hands. So next, Puji, you're here.
No, I'll be the
And then
last one.
after Puji, Soka, you please go
Okay,
ahead.
you should
Yeah,
go for
Puji
Soka first,
first.
and I'll be the last one.
Okay. Yeah. Um, So our colleagues, Fiji,
Thank you, Puji. Sorry. So thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question regarding data validation. I can see in the framework that the communities are also contributing into the portal. Now my question is, how do you then validate in a case where there's different data sets submitted by the NDMO together with what's coming from the community? How do you then ensure that this is streamlined? Naka?
Thank you. So we have started working on there's a community profiling that the New Zealand government is sponsoring at the moment, and through the Ministry of Internal Affairs as well. We've started to. It's on a pilot phase. We have a template, a questionnaire outlined for the profiling, but we'd have to finalize it before we can use that down to the community levels.
Okay, Zusi, thank you for the presentation. This is not a question actually from my side. It's more of an offer. I know that establishing a disaster statistic will be a long way and complicated, but so far it's been going well. My question to you, Susi, what would likely be your need for help? Is there anything that I can help you?
That's the good question, Puji.
Exactly, it's a good offer actually, right?
Yes, yes.
So that's a question from my side. In which part that most likely you need help? Over to you.
Thank you. I think thank you, Puchi, for that offer. I think we need a lot of help from our end because this is the first time that we're doing this, and we do not have a dedicated staff for this disaster. We have I'm a statistician for the environment where disaster is inside, but I'm focused on SIA under the environment stats. But I'm taking this on board. I'm new to disaster, but I'm undergoing some courses from SIA. I just need a basic, maybe some basic set of indicators and your expertise on the standard terms that we use across when it comes to disasters. If you can provide that and share it with me, or maybe have one-on-one sessions on maybe mostly from our side capacity building and understanding disaster-related statistics, that terminologies used.
Okay.
In the standards used.
Maybe the same thing would go to Facity in Fiji. So if colleagues in the Pacific would like to have a joint session, not session, a briefing, for example, right? I'm more than happy through Maria, Enrique, to have a joint session with colleagues in the Pacific. Let's find the good time. And we can have an extended time to discuss, to introduce the concept, and check with realities whether that's possible or not. Like Facility's question, if you would like to involve the community, which is very good, but it requires certain mechanisms to have, like when you have a laptop, and you want to use USB, you need to have the port in it. You need to have the connector between the community and the system. So what kind of mechanism do we need, and what we can do in the Pacific? So it's an open invitation, and I could fall back on Maria Enrique to make that arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Puji. Thank you, Susie. Hopefully, our Pacific colleagues will use our advisors wisely. So, Susie, we also have a question in our chat box, and it says that it asks, please explain what the communities will do in improving disaster statistics.
I think, as I mentioned here, it's just that when we go out to do consultations with our stakeholders, it's best to have a representative of the community And in provincial offices, we have the national disaster management offices in the provinces, but it's good to involve community leaders in any events, any awareness or any disaster related things in the future, so that they are aware of what our needs from the disaster related statistics team, the agencies, need during, before and after disasters. I think one of the things that we were talking about last when we met with the PMO is the importance of the community profiling, which we're still undergoing a pilot. If it works, that would be one of the things that they should be involved in when it comes to disaster-related statistics. That would be one of the things that will complement our work, to have baseline or updated statistics always on the IES available.
Yeah, thank you, Susie. So if you have any other questions, please use the chat box so Ms. Susie can answer using the chat box. Thank you. So let me move to our second presenter. Before moving to second presenter, I would like to thank again Ms. Susie for the great presentations. Thank you, Ms. Susie.
Thank you very much.
So today we have Ms. Iria Tozan-Kali, Program Management Officer of UNDRR Regional Office, Asia and the Pacific. Ms. Iria will present about country-level coordination for disaster-related statistics. So Ms. Iria, the floor is yours. You have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And again, thank you very much for inviting me and for having us. Always very interested in participating and also learning from the members and participating in the discussions. So my name is Iria Tauton, and I work with the Regional Office for Asia Pacific of UNDRR based in Bangkok, and I'm working on risk knowledge and analysis aspect covering disaster loss data. And today I'm gonna start sharing my slides. I just want to share with you some reflections on important aspects and also good practices on addressing those challenges around coordination at the country level that had been mentioned by the chair at the beginning as a recurrent discussion in this working group, and also since some suggestions as well as some good practices we have identified in the different dimensions. So first of all, let me just confirm you can see my presentation. Is it working properly?
Yes, Iria, it's we can see it very clearly.
Perfect, thank you. So perhaps first on the component of the disaster-related statistics covering as well disaster risk and risk information. Through the Works into Action International Disaster Risk Assessment, we have put forward some suggestions in terms of good governance mechanisms for undertaking risk assessments that look at having a lead agency, but also a multi-stakeholder coordination body, potentially utilizing various functioning national DRR platforms that really could help with identifying what are the different analytical needs and information needs, and on the different purposes for which risk assessment are undertaken to be able to define the scope of the input data and analytical outputs expected. And normally lead agencies could be different, but it could be national civil protection and disaster management entities, but also in the case of climate risk profiles is often the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change departments, but also could be Ministry of Planning and Development, depending again what are the main purposes or what is the scope of the risk assessment undertaken. And again, here just to emphasize the importance of really understanding what are the different needs and information needs and for decision making of the different partners, but also ensuring the participation of the different stakeholders from the DRR coordination mechanism to make sure that information of different groups, but also their needs in having risk information are considered when undertaking risk assessment, to make sure that the risk assessment is not just one-time exercise, but is really feeding into a risk-informed decision-making and planning process. So perhaps some enablers and good practices that we could highlight here, and this is not necessarily UNDRR work, is some kind of compilation of good practices and with some contributions from our side, but many from other entities and from other agencies. So first, I think one important aspect around conducting risk assessment is developing standards in terms of methodologies and process for undertaking them, and also how the outputs and the data sets to be organized. We learned about good practices from Pakistan in developing these policy guidelines for conducting multi-hazard vulnerability and risk assessment. And this is something from since 2016, those standards were approved, and the rationale behind that is that there are always many different partners involved in risk assessment, and sometimes this has been very project-based, depending on which donor, which development partner is supporting risk assessment. Their approach are different, the way the outputs are presented are different, the methodologies used are different, and there's NGOs conducting at the different levels, there's government of departments, government administrative, different administrative level. So the purpose of the Disaster Management Authority in Pakistan is to having a minimum standards that then help them to aggregate the information and have comparable risk profiles from the different provinces and district level. So this is definitely a very good practices on how developing standards for risk assessment contribute to ensuring coordination and ensuring that the data is comparable and can be aggregated and disaggregated as relevant by hazard, but also by different levels of administration. Another ongoing example, and I see Director of NDMO is present from Fiji. There is a request that we are trying to support from NDMO Fiji on developing some SOPs and standard operational procedures, how to conduct local risk assessment. So is in a way providing guidance, but also minimum standards for local governments on how to go about conducting risk assessment. We understand with the same reasons behind the policy guidelines in Pakistan that ensuring there is a minimum standardization of what are the methodologies and methodological approaches and the information considered, so that it can be compared across the country. Another good practices to notice in terms of coordinating and addressing the governance challenge for risk information is the initiative from Nepal in developing a geospatial database initiative, but in conjunction with a whole national capacity development approach to decentralize disaster risk management. So with the approval of the strategy and also with ongoing decentralization process in Nepal, there was a need to strengthen the capacities at the decentralized level to manage risk and therefore to also use risk information, but also to coordinate better on which risk information and how is provided and collected and aggregated from the different levels. So this platform is called BPAD, Building Information Platform Against Disaster, and it has several modules, including on risk profile, damage and loss information, but also real-time information. And the schema there is capturing what are the different data sources and where the different layers in terms of hazards, exposure, risk, vulnerability, capacities and climate projections will come from, and how they fit into the different modules. And they conducted also some mapping of the different data sources, but also identifying use cases and providing guidance for the users, but also for those that contribute the data. So in the table 2, I captured there what are the dimensions of use cases. So identifying at the local, at the provincial, and the federal level, what are the use cases of this risk information and the geospatial platform in terms of risk reduction, early warning, response, post-disaster analysis, more overarching risk-informed development and DRM governance. So those are some good practices to highlight in regards of the component around risk assessments and analysis. And now moving into the component 2, looking at the disaster impacts, something that many UN partners, including ourselves, have been working is towards supporting institutionalization of disaster loss accounting system to make sure that all the information that is commonly collected on exercise of post-disaster need assessment, of post-disaster assessment, and many times delivered through situation reports, doesn't get lost and is captured in information system in a database that allow them to query, but also to produce analysis. So important aspects of institutionalization, these systems, is to have agreed terminologies, potentially captured in glossaries and technical annexes, but also to belong to common agreed hazard classification, minimum barriers of impact and event impact information and event description to be recorded, disaggregation level, as well as metadata for sure. So examples of these are adopting and adapting from global standards data glossaries and hazard and disaster classification. I shared before with you in the chat this work from 2022 in the International Science Council and UNDRR on conducting a hazard definition and classification review and putting forward some proposed standards around hazard classification that has been complemented this year with the publication of over 300 hazard information profiles. And I will show you in a moment how these hazard information profiles look like. But the idea that this would be helpful for governments in institutionalizing this disaster loss accounting system so they can select which kind of hazard are relevant for the national context, but use these common definitions and classifications to structure their information. So for sure, in a landlocked country like Mongolia, you don't need to include tsunami-related risk, but for those that are relevant for your context, like Sud, you can have an agreed definition and then classification under which category of hazard this falls. And that helps in ensuring that all the entities that contribute data and, on the impact of a disaster event have the same definition and use the same classification, so then data can be better coordinated. So other important elements in institutionalization of disaster loss accounting system is developing standard forms and tools and handbooks for data collection. So field data collection to understand and record different disaster impact need all some kind of minimum standard forms to ensure that some important disaggregations are captured, but also that the enumerators have some understanding of what are the normal impacts of different events and how this is helpful into understanding attribution of damage to different aspects. So for example, cyclone might have impact in terms of wind speeds, have impacts in terms of structures, but also there are other aspects related to the storm surge and other associated hazards. So understanding the regular impact that this kind of hazards have to when they record impacts, then they can also associate that and being with the hazard characteristics. And other important aspect here is to also have SOPs for data collection from sectors and administrative level, but also standards and operating procedures around the compilation, aggregation, of visualization of data. And I put there an example of some methodologies that have been developed from the specific sectors that are helpful in assessing the losses from disaster event. For example, this is an example in the forestry sector. I found methodology that really give a lot of guidance of what should be looked into the damage, the value of the inputs that has been destroyed, but also the production losses. So what is the reduction of incomes and flows due to the disaster, and also the asset damage. So all these dimensions can be captured when conducting post-disaster assessments. And then there is commonly agreed methodologies and approaches on how to calculate quantifying this in terms of in economic terms, not only the replacement cost, but also the foregone revenues, and for example, agreeing on how much time would be considered as a normal time for the specific crops to go back to the same productivity levels as before an event, or others. So we have agreed terminologies and agreed methodologies around loss estimation. So in terms of that, just here bringing them on the aspect of the agreed terminologies, and bringing here one example of the hazard information profiles. So for you to have a look at how it looks like. So following this hazard classification on meteorological and hydrological hazard, extraterrestrial, geohazard, environmental, chemical, biological, technological, and societal hazards, then each hazard information profiles brings a definition, some reference and annotations. For example, synonyms, when in different languages, this is on different regions, they adopt different names. This hazard as an additional scientific description, some metrics, for example, in terms of dust storms, what are the metrics that are commonly used, key relevant UN conventions, some multilateral treaties, but then also some information around the common impacts and risk reduction measures that come in the next page that is not visible in this slides, but in other important aspects to ensuring coordination of disaster information relates also in having in the disaster loss data unique IDs to link the effects of impact of information to event characteristics. So for example, there's initiatives with WMO in supporting hydrometeorological services on having extreme events catalogs. So using these unique identifiers helps in linking the information on the impacts of an event to the event characteristics that are not necessarily always included into the disaster loss data. So for example, what is the path of a cyclone, what has been the different intensity levels at the different places it has passed through. And the identification from the beginning of when I'm trying to institutionalize a disaster loss data system of what are the analytical functions expected, which kind of analysis we expect to do is, for example, analyzing trends, analyzing seasonal patterns, analyzing hotspots, how is expected the data to be used. That is definitely helpful in enhancing the coordination. So here, and I know Utah is on the call, so this is Burr from Utah may work and run the need discovery need analysis on disaster loss data. So some of the kind of process elements of understanding the best ways to go about coordination for disaster loss information is using this approach on information and data governance. So not looking only at the technology aspect. So what is the software for database management that will be used, but for sure at the processes, but also governance and the people, the capacities that are needed. So with support of Utah, we conducted this analysis on disaster loss data needs around these dimensions. And for example, in the governance aspects, the needs that has been more highlighted are around the need to link loss information, loss data with development and political priorities to create incentives and support. So again, it goes back to the point on the analysis that we are expecting to do. What is the application of the data that creates additional incentive for sector departments, for example, to collaborate. And there is some beautiful examples from our partners, and UNDP always highlights an example, for example, in Cambodia, that analyzing trends of disaster impact and make the NDMO become more aware that lightning was an important hazard in the country, and there was no kind of awareness raising mechanism. There was no early warning system on lightning. There was no risk management measures on lightning. So conducting this kind of analysis on trends helped them developing some awareness and early warning mechanisms around this hazard that was not previously looked at, or conducting sectoral analysis like looking at the impact of disaster in roads to design more resilient road infrastructure in the country. So the importance of understanding what are the potential applications and needs of disaster information to create incentive for the different sectors department to collaborate in the production of disaster loss information and statistics. So some good practices around the disaster loss data coordination at country level that I wanted to share here. So in the case of India, we had supported, UNDRA has supported along with other partners, national disaster information management system that really tried to strengthen capacities at the different levels, states and district level in collecting loss information, and along with the creation of a national disaster loss database that is hosted by the National Information Center, and has all these good practices that were mentioned before, like a unique event identifier. There are some protocols and responsibilities identified among the different levels, the state, the district, and the central level, but also work a lot with the sectors in identifying what are the relevant categories of asset by sector. For example, when capturing data about the impact of disaster in the housing sector, which kind of categories of housing are normally found and used in the country. So then they can be recorded differently, and then the information around the average cost of replacement is easily available with the housing responsible departments to make sure we can better quantify the impact of the disaster. And then another example here is some work supported by UNDP in Bangladesh around developing a functional structure for Sendai framework monitoring and reporting in the country. So I hope you can see it's not too small, identifying against the different targets and indicators on the Sendai framework, a mapping of the capacities and the data contributors. So what is the organization that is the custodian of that information? Is that formally established? Is there a formal mechanism to collect this data? With which purposes the data is collected? Does the organization have process, technical skills for adopting Sendai framework monitoring? And was the awareness of this organization on the Sendai indicators? So that helped in developing some kind of outline of a structure for coordination of Sendai framework monitoring and reporting that attributed responsibilities to creating a steering committee for Sendai framework monitoring and reporting, a national level technical committee, and then having in the Sunday Framework monitoring reporting system a clarity on the different roles. So who is the coordinator, who are the contributors, who is the validator, and who may have this role on observer. So this, I understand, is a proposal that came upon that capacity assessment, but I don't think that has been yet formally adopted. But was really an attempt to strengthen that national coordination mechanism for, in this case, for the collection and reporting of disaster loss data through the Sendai framework monitoring. And some other interesting initiatives and good practices is, for example, in the case of Bangladesh, that had the humanitarian country task team and co-chaired with the Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics. There's been an establishment of an information management working group that is trying to complement the role of the mandated organization, the Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics, in collecting, compiling, and analyzing data, especially on demographics in the context of disasters, and disseminating disaster-related information to those in need. So connecting more what is the information management system on the humanitarian sector and the humanitarian partners with also the official information from the Bureau of Statistics. And some of this mapping has been done of what are the different strategic linkages of this information management working group with the UN humanitarian partners, but also with national partners and with the cluster system. And some initial outputs that this working group has been producing recently is still on the initial stages of mapping what are the different, doing an inventory of the different data sets from both humanitarian partners as well as government institutions, and then creating a survey of service assessment registry. So an exercise to establish and document the metadata and pointers to the non-service and assessment that has been conducted to date in Bangladesh from different government entities, but also humanitarian partners. So quite a lot, as you can imagine. So it's kind of creating some registry of those. So just to conclude, some key messages on the what could facilitate and strengthen coordination and governance for disaster-related statistics. So this aspect of working on the institutionalization beyond project-based interventions requires really clarify the roles and the mandates from legal and policy frameworks, but to be further detailed through directives, SOPs, and technical guidance. This mapping exercise of what are the data producers, what's the custodian organization, and what are the capacities to manage data is a very important foundational step. Visualization of data flows and process to identify where are the gaps, where there are overlaps, fragmentation, and interoperability needs. But also, through some good practices have been highlighted, the importance of developing use cases and defining what are the analytical functions and aims to from the beginning of the design of any kind of database and information management system, and then anchor all these data governance process in a larger context of strengthening capacities for risk management and disaster risk governance, and then look more comprehensively at these key components that has been highlighted in the disaster-related statistic framework. So not only the disaster impact, but also on the risk information. And for sure, even if I didn't cover it in this short presentation of the DRR relevant activities and expenditure through all the efforts around tagging and tracking budgets and public expenditure, which are extremely relevant, but I just didn't have many examples to share at this stage with you. But for sure, looking at all these three dimensions are very important. So with that, I leave it here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Yuria, for very rich presentations, of course. It was very interesting to listen the good practices from the regional countries, how they are doing well in disaster statistics coordination. And then also I will definitely go over the technical report on hazard definition and classification review. And then as you mentioned that Zud is a very unique wintertime disaster, and then that I believe only Mongolia experience it nowadays. Yeah, thank you very much. So even we are far behind our time, I would like to take questions or comments from our members. If you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand or please use chat box. Thank you.
Excuse me, Aruna. I think in the
Yes?
interest of time, I think we can go straight to Ms. Wanti.
Okay, sure. No problem. So last but not least, I would like to invite Ms. Harmavanti, Director of the Social Resilience Statistics Division, Badan Pusat Statistics Indonesia. Ms. Harmavanti, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the time giving to me to present the work that has been done by Indonesia. Actually, Mr. Ateng Hartono will be present, and so because he don't have a time, another commitment, so he asked me to present this point. Next, please. Ladies and gentlemen, in this PowerPoint, I mentioned about efficient institutional mechanism in Indonesia related to the disaster statistic. I call it efficient because it's not. I mean, we're not final for with the institutional arrangement and mechanism, but we already have the proposal for this. Yeah. In this chart, we see that there's two part National Disaster Data Forum and Local Disaster Data Forum, because as you know that Indonesia consists of 34 provinces and 500 districts. So in each district, each province, we also have the national data for local data forum. And in Indonesia, we now have the program, it's called it Indonesia One Data. With the Indonesia One Data, this is the institutional mechanism in a general that we will have the we call it the national custodian for its tema data. For the disaster, we have the National Disaster Management Agency as a national custodian of the disaster data. And we also have sectoral as the custodian of the producer data, and also BPS as a National Statistic Office as the we will become the statistic side. And this national data is with Ministry of National Development Planning as a national of data custodian. So in the institutional arrangement, institutional mechanism, that all the producer data will send their data in a National Disaster Management Agency, and then we in a BPS as we give the technical assistance to them, to the all the producer and also the national custodian of data, disaster data. And also because in one data in Indonesia, we have 4 principles that must be meet. That's one metadata, one standard data, and also one code of reference, and also the data can be interoperability. So using this mechanism, we hope that all the 4 principles in one data will be fulfilled. And we also have the collaboration among all the institutions. And now we are in a work in a collaboration with the National Disaster Management Agency and BPS, and also we have the collaboration with National Geospatial Agency because they have their map related to the resilience of disaster. Next. So I will explain what already done, what effort will that BPS and other agency done. We actually have done in mapping the DRSF indicator and identify the data producer. So we identify that about 40 sectoral that produce the data related to the disaster. And we try to map in the DRSF indicator. And also we try to have discussion with the producer data, and also find the producer or estimate the data that not produced by none of data producer. So we try to find the potential producer data. So we will we make three tier. Tier one is the data that already exists. Tier two that exists need some improvement, and tier three that this is the data that not produced yet by any agency or many institutions. So, but now in this year we focus on the tier one, the data that already produced, and we try to mapping in a DRSF. And also we explore the disaster terminology. It means the standard of the data, standard data. So we try to use the DRSF to be our framework, and we make a discussion. The challenge is that there is no agreement regarding disaster terminology in Indonesia. I mean, it's not yet, no agreement, but not yet agreement among all. So we need to have a discussion, intensive discussion to discuss the disaster terminology. So I think the presentation before, I think it's very good for me, for us, for Indonesia, to use the method that already done in Bangladesh. And also we try to develop a disaster statistic dashboard prototype. Why we use we try to develop the dashboard. The purpose to develop the dashboard prototype, we call it prototype because we not yet put all the information over there, because we think by so the real use the real dashboard or the real portal or something to the producer data, we can ask them to join with us. So by now, we put all information related to risk, disaster risk data that produced by BPS, by National Statistics Office. We overlay with the information from the National Disaster Management Agency and also with the Geospatial Agency. So we make some overlay information. For example, when it's there is a disaster happen in one place in a geospatial, we can see the radius, and we can show the information, the number of the people over there, the number of the infrastructure, the number of the infrastructure, and also the people, also the physical building over there. So it become the information for the government to do when should do the recovery. It is the prototype that we already developed in Indonesia. Hopefully, using this portal or the prototype dashboard prototype, we can ask others producer data to put their information, because our portal is using the API, so we not take the information for the producer data, but the machine to machine will be used over there. So the information become the real-time information for somehow, and also the update information from the statistic, from the macro information will be put in the dashboard. Next, please. And for the dashboard, we will put the metadata, standard data, and also the all information related to the disaster data, and also the indicator related to SDGs, and also the Sendai will be put over there. And we also try to make some visualization on there, and also the user can make their own table using the dynamic table. So we try to put to provide every information and in a easier way. And also we try to in Indonesia, as I mentioned before, because we try to have one data in Indonesia, one Indonesian data, and they need to have standard data, metadata in every information that we produce. So we also submit the information related to standard data that can be used in a disaster-related statistic. It will be submit to the BPS, and then we will put it in a dashboard. And also we try to have the publication related to the metadata for its indicator, and also this metadata will be put in a dashboard. So in a dashboard, we will have the data, metadata. So we will have aggregation of the data. So its data will have the standard data, they have the metadata, and it can be interoperability. We will compile the metadata also in a publication, as we said in a portal. We also have the publication related to metadata, standard data, and also the learning process that we already face when we try to use to develop when disaster statistic data. And to share the information between the producer data, we use the application programming interface. So we are not send the data, but we use the API. So the machine will talk each other. So when one data update in one system, another portal, so the portal also will get the newest information, updated information. So we hope that using this portal, we can have the link or collaboration with another portal, another producer data. That way, they have they produce the disaster data using the machine, and because we have like rule, the data will put in a disaster statistic data need to have one standard data, need to have metadata. So to do it, we will discuss with every producer data to have discussion related to the standard data, and also the metadata first before they put the data in a portal. So hopefully, if it can be done for all the producer data, we will have one disaster data that can be interoperable with each other with use one standard data, and we use the framework from the DRSF, and also every data go with the metadata. So hopefully the user can easily get the information from the portal, and also the information should be only one, because we use the one information, one single standard data. But we know that to do this, it's not easy way. We need to work hard and also have discussion, because by now some producer have their own classification, their own standard, their own metadata, their own code of reference. But we will work together with National Management Disaster Agency to to make it, to make the data will have one standard data. Next, there's so many challenges will be faced to do this, but we think we can make it if we have a commitment. So this is the uh, the recommendation that or maybe conclusion that we can make, that we will collaborate with the National Planning Agency to coordinate the the uh, the work. This work it is it's not easiest way to do this, but by now we has collaboration with the National Management Agency, Disaster Agency, and also the Geospatial Agency. We hope that using the dashboard we already produce, we can show to everybody that if we work together, if we have the commitment, if we can use one standard data, one metadata, so we can produce better information related to the disaster statistic. So another recommendation that we need to have the discussion related to interministerial agency on standard data, on also on metadata, and also the discussion related to the SOP, to the how to share using API, and also we hope that the portal can be used for everybody. I mean, everybody will realize that we really need this portal, and they will be can share their data, and also discuss the standard data and metadata with BPS, and also with the minister with the National Management Disaster Agency. And as I mentioned before, that all the disaster data contained in the dashboard that we will produce should comply the data one data principle. This is one data, one standard data. We will use the DRSF on, and also one code of reference, and also data can be interoperable each other. And we still work in with the National Planning Agency to have or to discuss related to the institutional mechanism using the we have the prototype with two agency. Hopefully it can be evaluate and can be used to have coordination with other agency. I think that all I conclude. I pass, I give the time to moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harmavanti, for the excellent presentations. Unfortunately, due to the time constraint, we are unable to have the questions in person. But if you do have, please put them in the chat box. Then Ms. Harmavanti will reply you. Thank you for your understanding. So before moving to our workshop session, I would like to thank again our presenters for their brilliant presentations. Without any further delay, I would like to move to the next session. And let me invite our advisor, Mr. Puji Pujiano, to provide a brief introduction about our workshop session. Puji, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, so we are moving now to the workshop part of the meeting. As it was said by Madam Chair, this is the third workshop in the series. These are the three biggest problems that you said to be the biggest challenge to establish DRSF in your countries. First, that there is no policy to bring together NTMO and NSO. We discussed that on the first workshop. Second, try to determine what are the content of each of the subdomain within the DRSF, and we discussed it in last meeting. Now, in this workshop, we'll be talking about the business process in terms of the coordination, because as you heard from Susi, from Iria, and from Wanti, DRSF involves so many agencies. They have to be coordinated in certain ways, okay? I think the presentation from Indonesia shows you the complexity of coordination at the national level, at the local level, and connecting those national and local, connecting with the sectors, and then connecting with the nerve center, if you like, some sort of center of the data, which is usually the SDG Secretariat or something. Anyway, with that introduction, so this is the last of the three workshops in a series, and we hope next month we will wrap it up, and then we can decide what we need to do next year in accordance to the 5-year plan of the technical working group. Okay, so now in terms of the workshop this time, there are 3 subgroups as we did last time. All right, the 3 subgroups will have facilitators, each of that, and you'll be grouped at random. But now I would like you to, as you look at the program, there are 3 things that we would like to tackle, and we would like you to go back in the main room with several information from your group, right? Group number 1 with Ranjit and myself, we're talking about the division of labor. All right, so those who will go to group 1, remember, and Ranjit will repeat it for you. What Susi did earlier, she explains how each of the agency was responsible to do certain tasks. So what are the division of labor among agencies? The NSO, NDMO, and then the sectors, and then SDG Secretariat, for example, right? So think of that. Group number 2 with Maria, to discuss the platforms, okay? What would be the good structure and mechanisms that you would employ in your country if you establish the DRSF? Would you like to establish a technical working group? Or would you go like Indonesia to machine coordination? All right? Or would you like to be a subcommittee of the SDG Secretariat? Think of that. And think of, pick up 3 mechanisms and you discuss in your group number 2, what are the advantage and disadvantage of those structure? Okay, so Maria will walk you through that. If you want to have technical working group, what is the advantage, what are the disadvantage, if you want to have a committee, and so on, right? And the third group will be talking about the principles in terms of do and don'ts. When you do coordination in disaster statistics, what are the do's and what are the don'ts? All right. Remember that NSO are not the owner of the business. Usually the business belongs to NDMOs. All right. And one thing was say that each of the sectors have their own data. They don't want to give it to you just like that. So in that, we would like to have you to discuss what are the do and the don'ts when you coordinate with your sectors. All right? So those are three things, and then I would like to send you to the subgroup. I'll be joining Ranjit to the group number 1, and I will see you back here shortly after the group discussion. Maria, over to you for the subgrouping.
Okay, thank you very much, Puji. Our organizer, Miss Nalinrut, will be the one who is assigned to break out the group into 3 groups. So in just a while, I think we have to wait for a few minutes, and she will be assigning us to our respective groups. So Ying, kindly initiate the subgrouping. Thank you, Puji.
It's opening. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Ranich.
Yes.
I will reassign you. I don't know why you're supposed to be in meeting room 1. Let me try it again.
You are assigned to group 1. What's your country? Hello.
Right, right.
Ah.
Group 1, right? Please hold. It take a while. I'm sorry.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, it's processing. So you're with me right now. I'm sorry.
Yes, yes.
How are you?
Oh, fine. So how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Ah,
We are excited to organize this meeting.
yeah.
Hi, Eileen. Are you?
I'm losing my connection, but it's okay. Maybe I should.
Yes, I'm reassigning you now. It will take a while. Please hold, Eileen.
Okay, because my connection is really bad. It's been dropping.
Right. Yeah, but Ranich as well. So I just could able to assign it to back.
Yeah, but if I'm not there, it's okay. If it.
No. I'm doing it now, but it's gonna take a while. Just please hold. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
You was in room number 3, right?
I don't know.
Okay, let me check.
I don't know. Thank you.
Yes, it's number 3.
All right,
Nice.
colleagues, welcome back to the main room. I know the discussion in the group was so enthusiastic that you're running out of time. But that being said, let's move on to the group reporting. Group number one is talking about the division of labors between the principal actors and disaster statistics. Group number two is talking about the structure and mechanisms of nation. And group number three is talking about the principles or do and don't, to be simple. Okay? So can we now move on to group number one, please? I believe Ranjit is the one who will report from group number one. Ranjit, over to you.
Just 5 minutes for each, Puji.
Right, you have only 5 minutes, so don't read the details. Just highlight the answer. Ranjit, are you ready? I have no answer from Ranjit. Can I move to group number two? Maria, is your group
Yeah,
ready?
okay. For our group, it will be Nazira from Malaysia who will be reporting in behalf of Group 2. Over to you,
Okay.
Nazira.
Kak Nazira, Assalamualaikum. Please highlight the result of your group.
Okay, for our group, we discussed on the mechanism of a coordination between the National Disaster Management Office and other related agencies. As for Malaysia, we have steering committee on environment statistics, which is chaired by Economic Planning Unit, and also we have National Steering Committee on Climate Change, chaired by Ministry of Environment and Water. And also, these two are the platforms for all the agencies to discuss on particularly on environment statistics and climate change, which also includes the disaster related matters. And also for Philippines, they have Interagency Committee on Environment and Natural Resources Statistics, IACENRS, and also the Technical Working Group on Disaster Statistics, which is called Technical Working Group for Disaster Statistics. And as for India, they have Ministry of Home Affairs, which is responsible for reporting to Sendai Framework, and also NSO, which is the agency to monitor SDG indicators, as well as supporting all agencies in terms of data collection. And also they have NDMA, the National Disaster Management Agency, which responsible for collecting disaster related data and also making policies related to disaster. And also the mechanism of coordination is through high level committee, which is the steering committee, technical committee, and also sectoral committee on SDG subjects. And also for Sri Lanka, they have a disaster management center, which is the umbrella organization for all the agencies related to disaster. And also they have Department of Statistics, SDG Council, Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. And the mechanism of coordination is through steering committee, technical committee, which also includes disaster related agencies. And as for Iran, they have Office for National Disaster Management, and also Ministry of Forestry, which are responsible to collect data on flood and landslides. Yes, so that's what we discussed in the group just now.
Okay. Is there anybody from group two who would like to disagree with that report? Or who
Yeah,
would like to add anything?
we all agree, Puji.
You all
So as you
agree.
can see for Group 2, we can see the hierarchy of the interagency mechanism, starting whether it's steering group or and down to the TWG, so that the
Okay.
TWG does the work, and then it's being elevated to the higher committees for approval and decision making.
Okay.
So that's
I
for
I recognize five models that are interrelated. As Maria said, there is a steering committee at the highest level, a steering committee on climate change, steering committee on environment, and so on. And you have a technical working group, which is rather operational among principal parties. The third one is a data center for SDGs that tend to compile all the data. The fourth one is like in Sri Lanka, have the disaster management center that become the center of the data related, informations. And then also at the sectoral level, they have data centers as well. Now, group 2 was talking about identifying those spots and how one is coordinated with the others. Yeah. So I think you have a sense now, colleagues, from this discussion that disaster strategies are really spread from everywhere, and one way or another, they have to be coordinated to be effective and consistent. Okay. Thank you for group number 2. The secretariat will take note of this and come out with a report of the workshop. Can I go back to group number 1? Rajit, are you ready to report?
Yes.
Okay, so group number 1, we'll be talking about the division of labor among the agencies and principal actors. Ranjit, over to you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Sorry for the delay because my connection is interrupted, and National Disaster Management Agency is the responsible for data collection and data collection on the disasters, and also the statistical department of DCS also collecting population demography data, and in addition to that, DCS collect the produce industrial data, agriculture. In addition to that, as a sectoral agency, RGO Register General Department has collected population annual population death and live birth data for it used for the annual population estimation, and also the National Disaster as a sectoral agency, National Disaster Relief Service Center collect the death affected population, and also the and also collect the some disaster drought data, relief data for the planning purposes and the implementing purposes. And also UNE agencies and NGOs and INGOs collect some flood data, drought data, and some demography data for time to time on their project wise. Thank you.
Anybody from group 1 who would like to add to the report of Ranjit? Ariuna or Muhammad? Anybody who would like to add into Ranjit's report?
No, for me, everything covered
It's
by
good?
Ms. Ranjit. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. So group number, same here, Muhammad. Donabat bhai. Okay. So for group 1, I think what you heard from Ranjit and the full record is with Kun 4 is that among the principal actors in DRSF, each and every one of them have responsibility and tasks. They are distinct, but they are complementing one another. Okay. Now, can we move to group number 3? Now we're talking about the behavioral principles of these agencies. Susil, who will be reporting from group number 3?
Thank you, Puji. Basically, we discussed about this interagency data flow system and the experiences from the Philippines, Indonesia, Nepal, and we got some remarks from Ricky and from UNDDR colleagues, Iria and the Yo. We also got some feedbacks and some remarks from from Ricky and colleagues from the UNDRR. So from our group, Miss Yo Kunida will share the discussion of our group.
Okay, Kunida-san, please.
Thank you. My name is Yo, and I work for
Yo,
UNDRIA
okay.
Pacific Office, so colleague of area. So our group discuss interagency data flow diagrams, and three countries share their experiences and good practices. First of all, Sushil from Nepal of National Statistics Office says that in Nepal, Ministry of Home Affairs lead disaster data collection, and Disaster Management Division developed a portal which functions well, which name is DR Portal in Nepal. Everyone can Google it and see it. And there, every 2 years, census surveys take place and environment statistic publication is published. And in Nepal, there are more than 6,000 words and data collected from each local government and used for hazard mapping. And there is, in each minister, there is a focal person for data collection, and they establish a technical committee. And from in Indonesia, Novelia shared experience. They just did soft launch of disaster dashboard, and they organized a workshop with 3 institutions, and they are now working on definition of disasters. And they also focus on risk data and developing social economic profile, population data, census data, and they communicate with other ministries. And from the Philippines, Aileen shared her experience. And in the Philippines, Disaster Statistic Technical Working Group was established already in 2015. And Department of National Defense chairs a committee, and 18 agencies participate to the working group. And there, local government collect data, and it's also already considered as official data. And Leaky delivered her reflection. She thinks that a discussion of group 1 and 2 are linked to our discussion of group 3. And leading agency depend on if we collect data, statistics, or both of them. And it's natural, and it's natural factor to cause confusion. And EDA basically agreed and echoes the message. That's it for me, but colleague, please add. I'm sure that I forgot many things. Thank you. Over.
All right. Anybody from group 3 who would like to add? I think Novia is saying that the dashboard, the statistical dashboard in Indonesia will be launched next month rather than this month. Anyone else would like to add to group 3? Yusan, thank you very much for sharing that information. Sushil, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, she covered all the things what we discussed.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, just for highlights, one is that the DRSF obviously involved many agencies, and each of those agencies have their responsibilities and mandates and tasks. However, in continuation of our discussion on the first workshop, many of those responsibilities and tasks need to be made explicit and formalized rather than being assumed. All right. So one part of the job that we have is to understand this division of labor, and then formalizing it into some sort of national policy, if you like, and then that become a formal. And you can take it even further, that this formalized relationship may be elevated into, well, not elevated, to be implemented in the form of machine-to-machine differentiated tasks. Number 2, from group number 2, it said that the form of coordination may take different shapes and forms. Some of those are already available in the higher structure like steering committee of the environmental statistics, they typically are more established compared to disasters. But eventually, if we take the disaster-related statistical framework seriously, we may actually need to create a separate coordination, but related coordination, pertaining specifically on disaster-related statistics. In some countries, it might be a subset of the environment, maybe a subset of climate change. In some countries, like in India, this could be a combination of the Ministry of Home Affairs and then NDMO and NSO, but some sort of coordination structure and the way of working need to be put in place and need to be formalized as well. And the third one is that in conducting the business of disaster-related statistics, we need to be mindful of each and every agency's mandates that are different. Each are typically being reinforced by different legislation. So each sector have their own laws. They have their own legislation and regulations. They're bound into it. All right? So there's need to be some sort of arrangement in which this many regulations be harmonized for the purpose of the data related to disasters and to introduce certain type of standards, all right, data standards, so that those agencies could interact one with another in a more predictable fashion. And finally, I think out of that one, if we have, all right, now we're talking about if we have a national policy, as we discussed on the first workshop, that could be the first step. Just like what Vanuatu is doing, what Susi shared with us, she's working with Prime Minister's office to come up with that kind of policy framework. That will allow the different agencies and authorities to work comfortably under one umbrella policy. Number two, reconciling and aligning the agency's mandates, tasks, and data are not easy. 2 weeks ago, I facilitated the Indonesian NSO to work with National Disaster Management Office, with the NDMOs, and one of the volcanic agencies for 3 days in a hotel, and we locked ourselves for 3 days. You know, we didn't do anything. We just put our head together and asking the difficult questions. What is your data? What is my data? How can we put it together? What kind of standard? What kind of mechanisms? How do we reconcile it? What is the purpose of my dashboard? How is your portal operating? This looks similar, but we need to be clear how they work together, right? So it takes some time. And then there are tools available. Irina just said that there is a newly published hazard profile, 850 pages of them, right? It's being translated to all UN languages, so Mongolia has no problem because everybody read and speak Russian, but Indonesian, we don't speak Russian, we don't speak English, so we're thinking of certain way of making it available. But those are very important because they are the basis of how we communicate from one agency with the other. Finally, colleagues, I would like to conclude from this workshop with a lot of thanks to participants, and we fall back on the Secretariat to determine what the next workshop will be. That will be the end of the year. Maybe we need to wrap up. We need to think forward what we need to do next. And we hope to see more countries undertake the DRSF, and next year we'll share some more concrete step forward. With that, I pass on back to you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Puji, for this great wrap up of this our last workshop for this year. And even we are a little behind our time, I would like to share one news before declaring this meeting closed. So Maria is leaving us, and then I'm really sad to share this news with our members. And Ms. Maria will finish her work with UNESCAP at the end of this year. So we have a month to work with her closely. And I know it's early to say goodbye to Maria, but since our last meeting for this year is scheduled on 15th September, and it will be very short, and then most of our colleagues may be not around during that time. So I think it will be a good time for us to say goodbye and thank you to Maria, and then of course for Maria to say goodbye to all of us. And on behalf of our technical working group members, it is my humble honor to express our sincere gratitude to you, Miss Maria, for your dedication and everything did for you. It is our great pleasure to work with you, and I wish you all the best. And I would like to ask our members, join me to give a big applause to Maria. Thank you, Maria. And Maria, yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. I'm really sad that this will be the time that I'll say goodbye, because I know that the December meeting will be a very busy time for all of us, and I'm not really sure if everyone will be available. But we'll try to have like a sort of ask the participants when is their best time for a short meeting just to wrap up what we have accomplished so far in the TWG, and probably have something on the way forward, what we're expecting next year. So in behalf, well, I'd like to say goodbye personally, and I'll just be finishing my contract this December 31, as Aruna said. And I'd like to thank everybody who has been with us, has been very active in participating right from the start in October. And thank you so much to Aruna for doing an excellent job in the chairmanship, and also Puji for being our advisor. And up to now, being a very active member and a um, staunch champion of disaster-related statistics in the region. So, with all sincerity, thank you so much to everybody. I've been really very happy to meet all of you, and I'm not closing the doors on everyone. So we'll meet again, I'm sure, in some other time in a different context. So, well, just to end this one, thank you so much to everybody, and it was really nice working with all of you.
Thank
So,
you,
over to
Maria.
you, Aruna.
Thank
Yeah, thank you,
you.
Maria.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And then, of course, we have our next meeting to say goodbye again to Maria, of course. And then, as Maria said, actually, then our next meeting is scheduled on 15th of December. And then, uh, if you have any other commitments on that day, please feel free to Secretariat, and then Secretariat will work on the date for our last meeting for this year. And with this, I would like to close the technical working group meeting for today. And thank you all again